This is Show Up as a Leader, a show from People Forward Network, helping you maximize your positive impact on the world by becoming your best, fully authentic self.
Hey, everybody. I'm just going to tell you right now that you are going to love this conversation and the purpose party that we're inviting you into with my conversation with my sister from another mister, kindred spirit, Nell Derick Debevoise. She is the most amazing human being. She's a vibrant, holistic, and grounded speaker, coach, facilitator, CEO, advisor, author. The list goes on and on and on. And her new book just launched called Going First, Find the Courage to Lead Purposefully and Inspire Action. And we'll put links in the show notes. But I'm telling you, my book is tabbed like ridiculously and highlighted. And we talk about such richness in it. And we start by redefining what courage is and isn't. It's not some big grandiose thing. We also break down what purpose is and isn't, and how we can depressurize purpose and turn it into something very tangible and actionable. You're going to want to listen for when she talks about your 1/8 billionth opportunity and what that looks like in the world, how she talks about how we need to see ourselves with love, and just all of the different things that we can do to show up more intentionally, join the purpose party, get out of our own way, and have more courage in our lives. I think you're going to have so much to take away from this conversation and probably have a little fun too. Nell, I have been waiting for us to have this geek out session. So I'm so excited that you're here.
Geeks unite.
We are. And I swear, like, you are one of my sisters from another mister and my kindred spirit. I was just like, oh my God, I'm so excited to have this conversation. So
Same, Rosie. Thank you. Glad to be here.
And so when this goes live, you will have also just done a webinar for us. And I have to thank you because for the listeners, I got the most amazing, unexpected gift in the mail. And I think it was in December. And it is Nell's brand new book, which we're going to be talking about, Going First, Find the Courage to Lead Purposefully and Inspire Action. And it came in this nice little box with the guide and a wonderful little brownie from Greystone Bakery, which I love. I had to give that to my son because I can't eat gluten. But I was like, here we go Nell. Anyway, so it was such an honor. And so I'm like, ooh, I'm going to read this and we're going to get back together and talk about it. And you can't see the picture, but I showed Nell. My book is like tabbed and highlighted like crazy. So I am super excited. Y'all, there is so much in this book. You need to go get it. And we'll put links in the show notes and all this stuff. But it's very, very practical. So I want to jump off because I love, first of all, going first, like, yes, please. And I just have to say, like, even before I dove in, you know, as I think about my career, I used to refer to myself as a salmon swimming upstream for a long time and being the one to go first. And there's times it's like it's energizing and there's times where it's like exhausting. And so I love that you also bring energy and stuff into the discussion. There's just a lot we're going to unpack. And so I want to jump off with this because one of the things that we always anchor all of our work in is this whole idea that we are living and working and leading in a VUCA world where disruption is the norm. And we know when disruption is the norm, it means that disruption and change are kind of simpatico, right? It's constant. And you jump off right away in the book saying that with change being a constant, it requires us to do things differently. And that requires courage, which you're speaking my love language. So let's jump off and say, how are you defining courage?
So I reference Brene Brown and her citing of the Latin, just the origin of the word courage, right, is actually cœur, or, from the French that I know of, heart. And so the courage that I mean is that it's not kind of, sword wielding, jumping off a cliff, bravado courage. It is the courage to deeply connect to our hearts, to our truest selves, which can be scary or hard to see, especially in a world that doesn't nourish or teach or certainly reward that kind of approach. And so, and then to act on it, to go first, right? To do that little marginal, suitable for you in this moment thing, whatever that may be, asking the colleague who is clearly kind of struggling across the table if they need to pause and what might be happening, or, pointing out to a supplier that, X ingredient in the product really is actually pretty toxic and problematic in the oceans, or, whatever these little things are, human or environmental, micro or macro, personal or professional, just the heart being courageous enough to open your heart, to lead with your heart in that way. And the fun, it's very timely. I got to be skiing this weekend with my stepkids who are grown and husband, which was an incredible delight. And so I was telling them that it was a struggle for me because courage is such a value to me. And yet I don't want to go in the trees, and I don't want to come down that black, and I want to go a little slower. And so how does that leave me? Am I not being true to that value? And so what I was able to pick apart for myself, and they were quite supportive and loving about, was, actually in my toast at dinner, I revealed this. I said that I was feeling kind of insecure about my skiing and with them, and not totally belonging as stepmom. And that was the courage for me, actually, was to say that at dinner and to let it out, rather than going down the black diamond, which I'm just not physically ready for. And so that's fine. That would be a goofy thing to come home with a torn ACL because I was courageous, quote unquote.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between courageous and just, stupidity.
Dumb.
And that's probably a harsh word, but come on, right? Knowing our limits is important. Well, and I love that. Small little things. Like, before we got on here, I was like, hey, I needed a moment because somebody on my team in our touch base was having really significant struggles. And, it takes courage to admit to your leader that you are not in a good spot, right? It takes courage for me as a leader to lean in and go, okay, right, I could brush under or lean in and go, okay, here's what we're going to do to pivot that. And so I think there are those, like you said, there are those micro moments throughout our day in every single interaction where I think we have opportunities to be authentic, to be courageous. You also tell some really incredible stories. I mean, you interviewed a lot of people for this book, and some of the people I know, and some I'm like, ooh, that's cool. But you have such rich data of some really amazing leaders, C-suite and other, of examples of, that courage in action. What is one of those stories that really resonated for you? There's probably a lot, but that is standing out for you that really had an impact?
So definitely one that I reference a lot that really landed and comes up as helpful insight for other people when I'm working with coaching clients or teams was a CEO of a tech company in Chicago. And I was doing these interviews kind of 2020, 2021 before finalizing the book. And so it was right after the George Floyd murder. And he was really struck by that, as so many of us were. And he's like, I think I need to say something to my team right there in Chicago, several hundred employees, obviously a mix of races and socioeconomic backgrounds and all the rest. And he brought it to his group of CEOs. He has a mastermind. And so he brought it to them and said, look, what are you guys thinking? I'm thinking of writing something and putting it out. And they were like, I'm not going near that. No shot. I just think that feels scary, risky. What would your investors say? How do you think that would go? Who are you to say anything? And so he left sort of deflated, but not resolved. And that weekend he talked to his wife and he said, look, I really feel compelled to speak up on this. And I got this advice from my peers. They pointed out rightly, I don't know what the investors will think. I don't really know what I'm doing. I've never said anything of the sort before. What do you think? And she was like, I think if you're feeling called to do it, you should. And his follow-up was, okay, are you okay if I get fired? Because I think that's an option.
Which that's huge. Yeah.
No joke,
Yeah.
right? They have kids, they have a lifestyle, he's a CEO, no joke. And she said, yeah, I am okay. So huge, right? Now we're talking about courage. This is courage. This is almost like Black Diamond level, right? I mean, it's a lot. So he writes something up, obviously, thoughtfully, carefully, drafts, thoughts, got input on it, and put it out to his team. And got this unbelievable reception. I mean, people just all levels of the organization. A few board members actually wrote and said, wow, impressed, well done. Really, really cool, right? And then his board master or his CEO mastermind colleagues are like, hey, could you send that language over?
Now they just needed someone to go first, right? Hence your book, go
Exactly.
first.
He went first, and what a fabulous ripple. And so that's act one of the story. Incredible, applause, tears, good for him, curtain. Act two, 4 or 5 months later, it was that fall, there was a flare up in Gaza of violence. Obviously, geez, nothing like we've tragically seen this fall and ongoing, but there was a flare up in Gaza. And some of his employees came to him and said, we would like you to make a statement. This is really heartbreaking for us. It's tragic. People are dying. People are at risk, so on. And he said, he took that on, and yes, heartbreaking and death, unnecessary death of innocent lives. That's not good. But it didn't feel clear, resolved. So he went home again that weekend, chewed on it, and came back Monday and said, it's not in my sphere of influence. It's in my sphere of concern. I'm sorry. I am sad. I am heartbroken. I am disturbed that this violence continues and that people are living unsafely and not free. But as a tech company in Chicago, certainly we have Jewish employees, we have Muslim employees, we have Arab expat, that there are people to whom this touches, and yet it doesn't touch a level of racial violence in the United States where we are headquartered and our clients live and sit. And so it doesn't make sense in this case for me to do that. So again, courage, right? In the lack of action rather than action, but to have the clarity and discernment around that, I think is so powerful. And then I just think this framework of the sphere of concern versus the sphere of influence is a very, very helpful filter in this moment of corporate activism, corporate opinions, right? I think that's a really helpful thing for leaders to use.
Sometimes I think we can sell ourselves short because we don't know the ripple effect. And to have that clarity, I love that you talk about sphere of concern versus influence, and that clarity does either help us decide, are we going to act or are we not? But we're doing it with an intentional act. And either one of those is an act of courage. I love that. I love that. So let's talk about them. So let's build on that, because clarity is really kind of that starting point, if you will, right? To make it easier to step into courage. And you talk about clarity as a key part of your purpose party. And I love looking at purpose as a purpose party. So we're going to dig more into clarity in a minute, because it's one of the ABCs of purpose. But so if we are going to act with courage and we're going to act with clarity, we kind of have to have that clarity, which starts with purpose. So let's start with talking about how you view purpose and what it is not and what it is, because I think you make a really helpful distinction between this in the book that so many people miss the boat on.
Yes, totally. Now, I think purpose needs a bit of a rebrand, right? I mean, I'm glad that it has, it's all the rage and zeitgeist and people are talking about it. And, obviously, thank you, Simon Sinek, start with why, but at the same time, I think that it needs a bit of a rebrand. I talk about depressurizing purpose. I think especially in pretty American. I lived and worked the first 10 years of my life abroad. And I don't think it has quite the same potency internationally, but, there's this American puritanical kind of sense that like anything related to money is neutral at best and probably a little bit bad or greedy or something. And then on the other hand, there's the Mother Teresa, good, pure white robes and angelic kind of work, right? And it's so damaging because it misses so much opportunity on both sides to invest really heavily in good work, first of all, and put money there and pay people well. And on the other hand, to bring goodness and impact into our business, which drives profit, drives engagement, reduces cost, and so forth. Anyway, point being that purpose is not a heal the world, cure cancer, save the Amazon thing. Again, it's just like courage is not, swashbuckling, killing the lion with a sword barehanded. Purpose is not just about saving rural blind children in sub-Saharan Africa, or, ending racism in your state, or these big grandiose things. It's rooted in action, first of all. So it's specific and concrete, and it's unique to you. So I say over and over in the book, what is your 1/8 billionth? Right? Let's imagine the population TBD, I'm probably a few 100 million behind, but there are about 8 billion humans on the planet. If we all did our 1/8 billionth to heal the world, whether that is by raising an empathetic family, or managing a productive, healthy, thoughtful marketing team, or running a restaurant that sources local vegetables and pays, fair and generous wages, whatever you have a piece in of that, just do that, right? And actually don't waste your energy on your whole sphere of concern, because we need you focused on what is your 1/8 billionth. Just stay there. And the final piece about purpose that I'll say is that it is not I'll do that when. It's not a nice to have. It's not something you grow into or earn into when you have a certain number of dollars or age or years or title. It is now. Again, not because I'm shaming you into it, not because you should be composting or doing whatever else, but because it is good for you. Studies, abundant research has proven beyond a doubt that this is good for our mental health and our physical health. It reduces the risk of heart disease. Just very fundamental, enlightened self-interest reasons why it is time now to start. Doesn't mean you have to have that potent single Pulitzer Prize winning 10-word headline of your purpose, but start getting clear about what you are uniquely positioned to do, that you care about contributing to in this world.
I love that. And you give really great, tactical ways of backing into a formula or to get started with a statement that I think is awesome. And it was interesting because, and if I can just share a little bit, when I think about my purpose journey, is I think I had partial clarity of purpose long before I could put words to it. Like, if you talk about, you look back, right, in your life and whatever, it's not creating it, it's clarifying it or finding it, because it's been there, right? So the find your why, it exists. It's like, how do you land upon it? And it's funny because I think back, early in my career, I started out in the fitness industry, granted teaching various different classes. But when I think about, when I used to teach continuing ed workshops for other fitness professionals, my whole thing was, I want them to have a moment of seeing this differently or understanding it differently so that they can show up differently for their classes. And I used to say, we don't need another person in this industry who's up there to be on stage. We need someone who actually cares about their participants, who wants them to have an effective workout and not get hurt. And then when I think about the classes that I gravitated towards teaching, spinning, well, it was coaching on a bike. It was my opportunity to have 45 minutes with someone to just give them a space to get into their mind and get out of their own freaking way. And people would say, I took you on my job interview. I took you hiking in, wherever it was, you know, and I think about that early, and then going into coaching and stuff. But where I finally landed on my purpose was that my purpose is to foster moments of insights so people can break past barriers, get out of their own way. There is something to be said for that about action, because it's what can I do today in this conversation, in this presentation, in this workshop to create that experience for people? Because I feel like it has a ripple effect. And then I feel like I don't know how far reaching, but it's what, that's what I feel like I was put on this earth to do.
Yeah, brilliant. It's so well put, right? And it really is. That's why, we'll get into it, but the whole framework in the book is very simple and universal about what do you do holistically through the 6 spheres of your work and life. What do you do? Because I just don't think it's helpful. People have different thought patterns and different learning strategies, but I've always been a fan of emergent strategy of it's very difficult to be to project some vision or future plan and then try to live up to that, right? Because do you have the training? Do you have the expertise? Do you have the resources? Do you have the time? Probably you have a pretty full, busy life today. So what happens to all of that? So much more potential in looking at like, what am I doing now? And how can I just recognize and give myself credit for the impact I'm already having? I actually find that most people underestimate the impact they're already having. And then where am I having neutral or maybe accidentally negative impact that I could be more intentional about and shift to positive impact, and then grow from there, right? By no means am I saying kind of like, you're good, you don't need to do anything differently or grow. To the contrary, we share that. But looking at what you do now is a way more impactful, empowering, and I've found effective way to really amp up how you're being purposeful and having impact.
Love that. So let's dive into that then. So how do we show up for what you call the purpose party? Like what are some of the elements and how do we get started whether we think we've clarified our purpose or not? Like I can what I found in your book is being someone who's done this work and then also like reinforces it with the YOS discovery from the Y Institute. Big fan of that too. But that there's affirming of, oh yeah, yeah. So it's like, oh yeah, I do have that. Oh yeah, this is how, because you identify and clarify your purpose. To your point, I love that you bring it to action. Identifying my purpose, me identifying my why operating system doesn't do any good if I don't have deliberate practices to actually have that be my North Star, my lighthouse to lead into it. So talk us through how we need to show up for the purpose party if we're going to have this courageous going first life.
Yeah. So the first step truly is self-awareness, right? It is the courage, frankly, to look in the mirror and really see what's there in a loving way. I think a lot of times, honestly, the courage for folks, especially people who are inclined to this work, the courage is actually to see themselves with love, because so often, we are self-aware. We're self-aware that we should work out more, and we're self-aware that we weren't as nice to our spouse at breakfast as we could have been, and we're self-aware that we should have left our phone outside the bedroom, and we're self-aware that we should be composting. So dial that voice down and dial up the voice of self-awareness that's like, wow, I'm doing a lot, and wow, the world is really intense, and wow, good for me for wanting to do even more, and good for me for realizing that I need to be okay before I can make anyone else okay, right? All of this. And again, not that there aren't any self critiques constructively, of course, but want to make sure that the self-awareness matches that kind of relationship magic of a 5-to-1 ratio, right? 5 positives for every constructive criticism or growth point. Because it's not feasible to go forth in this work without a positive orientation about yourself. So self-awareness. The second is willingness to change. And this is huge, right? Because again, that takes courage. We've all got patterns, and those are genetic, and those are cultural, and those are inbound from childhood, and those are supported by our friend group and rewarded by our workplaces. I mean, there's a lot there. And so the courage to actually say, I am willing to change and learn new things and do things differently, and realize that maybe I have been having an unintentional negative impact on someone by the language I use or whatever it might be.
It reminds me of Adam Grant, like we got it right. Think again. We have to unlearn and relearn. And that can be really cringy. Like you said, like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I've been using language that is rooted in an ism, pick it, until someone's points it out to me. Or I didn't realize that I was saying something in a way that was whatever, had a negative impact on someone else. If someone isn't gonna share that with me, I have no opportunity. But it's also like, it can feel like we can go into a shame spiral and go, oh, versus like, oh, okay. All right. I got some reflection to do. I got some unlearning and relearning to do.
Yeah.
But here's an opportunity.
Totally. And there's also, the long time leadership gem of what got you here won't get you there. I think that's another piece that, again, in this world of constant change or even constant crisis, if we want to call it that, we have to change, and it's going to feel weird. And you are really good at how you have been being and doing till now, because here you are having a conversation with me and you, Rosie, as a high performing leader, right? So you have to be willing to change. And that means it's not starting over, but it's a cycle back to the, that beginner's mind, and learning to do something new. So huge, which is why tenacity is the next point, because you just gotta keep doing it and being newly self-aware and being newly willing to change in a new way, and failing and learning and offending and grow. It just really takes it's a lifetime thing. It's not going to be done, which is exciting, right? If you're a lifelong learner, it's an incredible pursuit, but it's tiring and requires effort and requires courage.
Well, and I love that when you talk about tenacity with that, you make an important point, which is a nice weave in for well-being, is we have to manage our energy. And so much of any of this work, but if you think about like mental energy and physical energy and the different energy, I think a lot of times we forget about that. But energy is such a critical component. And even from the work itself, and I know like with the GC index and stuff, like where do you get energy? What drains your energy? But there is something to be said for that, because if we're going to, it takes energy to change. It takes energy to be courage. It takes energy to lean into our purpose. It takes energy to make decisions. I mean, all these different things in our life take energy. And so I love that you bring that aspect into it. Can you say a little bit more of maybe some more concrete things that people could be thinking about, of like why energy is so important and how that comes in as we think about showing up for our purpose party?
Yeah, it's really foundational in my work. So, as you mentioned, the GC index is this incredible cutting edge source of data about our natural energy, of how we contribute, right? So not what we're doing, but how, which part of a project or organizational cycle are we most naturally energized to contribute to. And then just the purpose piece, right? I sometimes call like the most regenerative form of energy there is, because I'm really clear, and I've seen through my life that like I actually really enjoy leisure. I love to travel. I love to eat. I love to read and like sit around. I love just being out with friends and leisure. I love it. And actually, I would much rather do that than a lot of forms of work. And people who know me, like I've said to people, I'm sort of lazy ultimately. I'd rather be leisuring. And people look at me like I'm nuts, right? Who know me and know the actual breakdown of my day. And I'm like, well, yeah, because not if I see the impact. If it's aligned with purpose, I will sit at my computer and lock into a crazy, LinkedIn campaign, or writing a document or an article, or re-recording a video, or learning to be a better speaker, whatever it is, for hours, because it's purposeful, and so that's the energy piece that comes from purpose. And then I am very clear that my meditation matters. And if it's 3 minutes simply on the Miracle Morning app, that's great. That works. If it's 15 or 20 of real, in the zone, my transcendental meditation practice, probably a bit better if I really need to be in the creative zone, right? But my dog walks matter, not having the phone at night, and my full 8 hours, ideally probably 8.5 or 9 hours of sleep. That matters to me. My food, it's better if I don't have some chippy cracker snack in the afternoon before I have to do the last piece of work, because I get feeling heavy and sleepy. So there are, there is the body, mind, spirit are the elements of energy, I would say, right? And the body is that sleep, movement, food, air, fresh air, light, all of that. The mind is a lot of what comes from GC index, that very concrete, tangible data about how I actually intellectually and concretely work. And then finally, the spirit of having that connection to why it all matters to you, so that when it gets hard, when it gets tiring, when it's scary, you have that North Star to remember, oh, right, it's all worth it.
All right. So what's then the fourth element?
Purpose. Don't forget your purpose to the purpose party. But again, in a very depressurized way, do not worry about the 10-word, perfectly crafted, unique statement. What I mean here is, honestly, it could be a synonym for intention. Just come. And if it starts with like, I have an intention to leave the world a better place, great, you're invited. If it comes with the intention of like, I want to be the person my dog thinks I am, because the joy that they show and the admiration they have for me is next level. That is a fair enough place to start, right? It really truly is just the intention to have some positive impact, how you are equipped to do. But you can't come to the party without that.
I love it. I love it. So we've got the 4 elements to come to the purpose party. So let's talk about what's going to get in our way of joining the party. What are some of the pitfalls to leading purposefully, and how can we overcome them if they try to hijack us?
Yeah. So these break down into the same 3 dimensions that I talk about in the outcomes, right? So me and we and world. And so for me, it's simply inaction. Like, inertia is a really powerful physical force that is as real as gravity. If you hold out a ball and let it go, it will drop. And if you sit here, you will continue to sit here unless you do something else and put energy into it, right? So inaction is really, really powerful. And it doesn't mean you're lazy. It just means that you too are subject to the forces of physics. And so, no shame, same, here we are. But it's hard. It's hard to do something, anything, to go first. It's just tough. And so, it obviously can depend a little bit on where exactly this inaction is showing up for you. Accountability partners can help. Treats help. I really encourage people to treat yourself. If you want to go play with the dog, or to do Candy Crush, or to watch a show on Netflix, or to take a bath, or eat some ice cream, whatever is going to help you get over that inaction, use it, do it. We are all basically just evolved apes. So don't be shy about working with your neurology in that way. The we dimension obstacle or pitfall is shoulding. We should each other. You should be a good worker. You should be a good friend. And that means calling me twice a day. You should be a good boss, which means giving me a raise every January. You should, all of these shoulds. And honestly, sometimes that we is actually ourselves and invisible, right? But it feels like, it looks like we call it a should from someone else, whether it's our mother or our society or our religion or our company. And these shoulds are really problematic, not that much fun, but they're actually also false, because we're in a world of constant change. They're false. They're wrong. They're based on yesterday. And yesterday, especially if it was like yesterday 2019, was really different. And so you should be at the office at 9 a.m. is just one very simple example of something that is totally false. And yet, a lot of us still probably feel that. So shoulds are tough. And, I think here too, it can depend. They look different. They are countered differently. Mindfulness is really good for a lot of these. Just asking the question, like a really simple trick is like, should I? Just 30 seconds. Just think about this. Should I? Should I be at the office at 9 a.m.? And look, again, if you're here, you're ambitious. You're a hardworking leader. You want to make a difference. So I'm not too worried about you being like, nah, I should be on the couch in Netflix right now. If you should, you will say, yes, I should. I have a team to show up for. I have a meeting. I have a client, right? I will be better if whatever. But maybe it's like, no, I should be home with my sick kid. I should be home myself getting better because I'm sick. I should be quiet in my office where I can think and do this big work that matters for my team's focus, whatever, right? So just examine those shoulds when they come up, when you hear them.
Well, I love that. I used to always say, "Don't should on me," right? But like, the other thing that I would add as you say that, what comes up for me is like, whenever I hear a should, I'm like, well, says who? Right? And like, and I'd be curious your thoughts, but like, as I was even listening to you, like, oh, I should be like in the office and be like, I love the idea of pausing. Like, no, I want to be home for my sake. Like, even just getting like you said, just get the shit out of it. Not, I know I should, like, no,
Yeah,
I need to, or I want. And again, it brings it back
correct.
to intention versus some external imposed. Again, like, I don't have agency. I'm not choosing for myself. It's like, no, this is not I should, I want, I need, this matters. Like, I think that that's a critical shift too.
Yes, I think that's really elegantly put. I think that's exactly the shift of truly eliminate the word.
Yep.
Yeah. And finally, this world dimension, the broadest is this notion of orthodoxy, which is a version of the should, but in the kind of cultural fabric of our lives, and what is this orthodoxy about what good families do, about how work looks, about, what the dynamic is between employer and employee. And again, it's just all changed. And it's not necessarily all new. I mean, I work with ancient wisdom of horses and, using kind of biomimicry for leadership and how we can learn from nature about how it produces this incredibly productive, efficient, and smooth ecosystem apparently effortlessly, right? Like, what can we learn from that? So the fact of kind of avoiding orthodoxy is not that it's all new and not to look at the past at all, to the contrary, but just this kind of post-industrial revolution, extractive, globalized capitalism orthodoxy, I think is really problematic. And again, invalid, basically, given technology, geopolitical issues, demographics, right? All of these things mean that we are in a different world. And so orthodoxy from 20 years ago or 10 years ago and even 5 years ago in some ways is simply invalid. And so it's a similar antidote of just examining it and sitting with that.
Well, and one of the things that you say when you're talking about orthodoxy that I think is so it can lead to the dreaded we've always done it that way, or whether it's apathy or being resigned. And you hear this a lot because that's at like the world level, or you said like the culture level. If we bring this to organizations for a second, I mean, we do culture transformation work and we do culture nurturing work once organizations have transferred culture, but culture takes ongoing intention. You can't just ignore it like a garden, right? It has to be tended to. And one of the things that I love that you share in your book that's very congruent with us is that culture is not a top down thing. Culture really is a bottom up. And I think so often try to push something down, or we don't realize that every single human in an organization, on a team, in a family can either contribute or contaminate the culture. And I love in the book, and it reminds me of work we're doing with one of our clients is, you can have the organization's purpose, which is great, and you can have the values and have deliberate practices at the operational level to have that be lived and be a lighthouse every day, which is necessary. And how do people find their alignment with that? And I think in the absence of helping people find that alignment, that orthodoxy that can lead to apathy and other things. Well, we've always done it this way, or we've tried it in the past, it never worked, so why bother now, versus helping to manage the energy around, well, but we didn't maybe have the deliberate practices in, or whatever. And so I love that for those people who are listening too, of like, whether you have a leadership role or not, every individual employee, you shape that culture.
1,000%, 1,000%. And so that's why, the corporate work that I do is always about individual purpose discovery. And so the wise leaders who, there does need to be an endorsement of it, an investment in it from the top to get that bottom up, engagement and activation. The wise ones are not like, oh, what if they find out our purpose isn't this, right? We hear that all the time. That's the orthodoxy. Like, it's not about them. It has to be at the corporate purpose. What if they learn that this isn't their deepest purpose, to make widgets for our tech company? They'll leave. And so the answer to that is two. One, if they're that disengaged and they're that disconnected, thank goodness they're leaving, because they're costing you more filling that seat than moving on and making room for the next by the toxicity in the team and the filled seat that's not efficient and effective. But more than that, people aren't idiots. We're not walking around thinking, I want this job because my truest purpose is to create marketing content for dog food, and look, they might love dogs and they might love writing and they might love the product, sure, but that may not also be the be all and end all of their purpose on this planet. And we need healthcare and salaries and intellectual stimulation and a productive outlet and colleagues. We want and need to be part of an entity and productively contributing somehow, and work is a really good place to do that. So I think the point here is that the leaders who recognize the opportunity in this day and age to enable, to empower, to invest in individuals to get really clear and purposeful on this, unlock that renewable energy in their teams. And to the contrary of, oh no, they'll have all their own ideas about what they want to do. No, they'll have fire and this renewed sense of energy and engagement to do the thing, as well as their side hustle or caring for their family or whatever. And how fabulous to have wholly alive and energized people on your team.
Absolutely. It reminds me of, it's been many, many years ago by now, but it was one of the like landmark studies that Amy Resniewski and colleagues did around like job crafting in hospitals, and they looked at hospital cleaning crews and like, the engagement and whatever, and they looked at those that viewed didn't have the purpose. They just were like, this is a job, versus those that actually felt purposeful and they viewed themselves as a critical part of the care team, which they are, by the way, right? It's not just, oh, I have to like help with infection control, but they view like they have an opportunity to interact with the patients and touch them and whatever. And so I think that sometimes people think, oh, I work in manufacturing, or I work in housekeeping, or I work in this, or I work that isn't a quote unquote glamorous nonprofit save the world type of job or industry. How can I possibly feel connected to a company purpose or find purpose? Well, guess what? Like any of us can. And that's what I love about this work.
Totally. And it's, again, it just want to emphasize that this is not new or the latest management trend, right? It's that anecdote that I'm sure most listeners have heard, but I think is worth remembering is, the person goes up, this is Middle Ages. So literally centuries ago, someone goes up to the bricklayer. What are you doing? I'm laying bricks. Cool. Okay. Walks to, the next guy down and is like, oh, so what are you doing on this project here? And he says, oh, I'm building a cathedral. Ah, interesting. And then goes around the corner to the third bricklayer, who is, keep in mind, these are all doing the same thing. They are all moving things and putting them on a stack. What are you doing? And he says, oh, I'm building a community of faith. Right. So again, this isn't new or different. It's like, it's this human thing of making meaning. We are meaning making creatures. And so it's not about whitewashing or, I don't know, scamming our employees to tell this story, right? Obviously we do see examples of that. And so I'm not endorsing that, but it's just about, I left the nonprofit space and came to corporate because it matters that we have healthy snacks that are easy for moms to pack in kids' lunchboxes. That matters. That makes the world go round. It makes the world a better place, and so it's not just, yes, it was amazing frontline work to provide mental health programming for kids in refugee camps. Like, whoa, that's the kind of eye-popping impact. But honestly, the reach and volume of healthy, easy to pack lunch snacks way outbalances what I was doing in that case. So neither are better or worse, but I just think it's so important to recognize all of them and be where you are.
Speaking of being meaning making creatures, and speaking of self-awareness, as we talked about earlier, as you probably know, Nell, one of the things that I'm obsessed with is normalizing this messiness of being human, and that no matter how self-aware we are, and no matter how many mindfulness exercises we do, that it is in our human DNA to tell ourselves stories that are self-limiting, that keep us safe, that keep us small. And so, what I would love, Nell, if you would share, what is a self limiting story that you still tell yourself sometimes? And when it shows up, how do you move beyond it so that you can still show up as a leader, show up to the purpose party, and have the impact you want to have?
Love this. Knew it was coming. I think what is most timely and certainly not resolved is that it is selfish, shameful, unfeminine, generally inappropriate to take up space and put myself on stage and invest in my visibility.
And so when that one shows up, how do you kick it to the curb, or are you still you're still figuring that one out, and we need some coaching sessions.
It's fresh, Rosie. Specifically, I would say for 10 or 12 years, I have built a company. I've invested in staff. I've accepted invitations but not pursued them. And what a bummer. Like, I have this message that probably by this point in the conversation viewers can hear, I am very passionate about. I care deeply about, not because it's making me more beautiful or richer, but because I've seen it change lives. And yet I've been like whispering it to the humans who see something and think to ask, rather than putting all that time and energy that I told you I am willing and able to spend into amplifying it and shouting it from the rooftops and getting it to more humans, even though I took 2 years writing 400 pages.
Right. Well, it's a start. And here's what I have to say that because you talk about Brene Brown in your book, I remember, way back when, and she'll still say, like, I've spent a lot of my career in life engineering my world to keep it very small because that felt safe and that felt secure. And that's kind of what I was hearing you. And I hear that a lot. And I think it happens more with women, I will say, but it happens with all genders. But I think that's very real. So I hope for you that you take up more space because you do have an amazing message. So there's that.
Thank you. And I mean, just the addendum that I'll add, I think it happens a bit more with women, but even more than that, the trend I see is it happens with purpose-seeking, impact-seeking people, which is so ironic and problematic because the people who take up the most space are not impact-seeking.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Are you ready for quick questions?
Ready.
All right. Fill in the blank. Living authentically is?
Fun.
Yes, it is. It's a party. It's a purpose party.
Yeah.
When the world is presenting an opening, but you don't feel like showing up as a leader, what do you do?
Breathe. Just that. Just that. I think that is enough to get you to that heart place and then the discernment, right? I think we could bring back that. Is this in my circle of concern or circle of influence? And if it's in my circle of influence, I got to step up. But first, I'm going to take a few breaths.
Breathing is good. All right. What is something people would be surprised to know about you?
I'm a big introvert and I love The Bachelor.
True confessions by Nell. I love it. All right. Well, this kind of is going to feed it. It's not a TV show, but what is your favorite go-to movie?
Elf.
You sit on a throne of lies. That's my
It's the best every Christmas, whether you need it or not.
There's one like, you're not Santa. You smell like beef and cheese. Right? Oh,
So
I love it. I love it. Okay. What's your go-to song?
Oh, Super Bloom by Mr. Wives.
Oh, I don't know that one. I'm gonna have to check that
Check
out.
it out. Best
Okay.
pump up. Best pump up.
All right.
Really
See?
delightful.
All
Yeah.
right. I'm
yeah.
writing that one down. Hold on. I
Yeah.
get so many good songs from these, like asking this question. So, all right.
You have to make a playlist. We need a Rosie in Your Pocket playlist.
Oh, we do. That would be awesome. Okay. Coming next. Okay. What is something you can't live without?
Chocolate is what comes to mind first. Also, outside time, nature, air, fresh air, sky, stars, moon.
All right. What is something in your ordinary daily life that makes your heart happy?
Dog walks and cuddles. If I'm really being honest, dog cuddles, even more than walks. My one dog spoons me in bed like the most romantic lover you can imagine. And there's just like nothing better. It's delightful.
I love that. I love that. Dog cuddles are the best. And what are you grateful for right now?
My God, so much. I'm writing an update, a kind of a new year, new me update to my, innerish circle of friends and colleagues, and the various forms of privilege that have been allowed this last 2 years of growth and learning since closing my company down range from financial privilege and time privilege to really dig into my relearning training practice as a professional, my intellectual training and privilege that has come with that, my social privilege of supportive friends and colleagues and families. Just so great. And then, giving myself credit for the courage and the tenacity and the purpose that I have, and really grateful to that. So in all the dimensions, to myself for doing the work and coming out 2 years later as a PCC certified coach and Equus faculty and a GCologist and a speaker with the courage to invest and take up space, to my family, my husband is just incredibly supportive, stepkids, mom, this is not an Oscar speech, but all of them, the colleagues and collaborators. I'd also like to thank the Academy as the world dimension. I really am grateful, that Hamilton song always rings. I really am grateful to be alive in this moment. I think it is very scary. I have history in the Middle East, and so that is deeply heartbreaking and disturbing. I am a proud American who lived abroad for 10 years and made me feel even more American, and our situation right now is absolutely heartbreaking and really unknown and scary. And I feel very clear that my being and the work that I am channeled and called to do is the work of this moment. And I feel grateful for that.
I love all of that. I love the Oscar speech you just gave. That's fabulous. So, all right.
You can tell them to call me. I'm free next Sunday.
Hey, all right. We got it. All right. Last closing question for today. Now, if you could challenge leaders everywhere to practice this one behavior that would create more human workplaces and equip everyone to show up as a leader, what would that be?
Get or grow a mindfulness practice that works for you. It could be dog cuddles. It could be meditation. It could be miracle morning app, whatever. I do not care. I talk about the many flavors of mindfulness. There is neuroscience behind this, right? So it can't just be like busily cooking while you watch a podcast and whatever. That's not mindfulness. But some version of mindfulness. And again, if you already do it, awesome. Congratulations, do more or teach someone else to do it. But there's just no doubt that in this world, a little more mindfulness is an unlock for you and for your team.
Love it. Love it. Well, Nell, you and I could like jam out all day, and I had so much fun. And I just want to thank you for taking up space in the world, because your book is amazing. Everyone needs to go and get it. The gift you gave to just put it out in the world is amazing, but the fact that I got it as a gift is also amazing. So just thank you for being you and the work you're doing, and just rock on, take up more space, sister.
Back at you, Sister Rosie. Thank you so much. So much fun.
I'm Rosie Ward, and this is Show Up as a Leader. To learn more, head over to peopleforwardnetwork.com and, of course, hit that follow button.